Hey, Nina.
Hello.
It's been a while since I've seen you.
Yes,
I'm
it's
sure
been
you've been
over
busy.
a year.
Yeah, I'm sure you've been still very active on what's going on in our lovely country.
There's so much going on.
Well, it's good that you're back because you reached out and you have a book that you want to share with a bunch of people, and that's what we're going to discuss. But I'm sure that the conversation will just veer off to a few little tangents on what's currently going on in our, I don't know how to describe it. Like, how do you title this what's going on in Canada these days with the housing and with the government and with overdevelopment or overdevelopment of fees and
It's a sloppy mess.
yeah. Any positive sight in the near future this year?
Yes, I think people are becoming more involved because they're realizing that we're not getting anywhere too quickly. So people are becoming much more involved, and it looks like we're probably going to be having an election this year, which I think is very positive. Myself, I think it's an opportunity to change horses. Like this is time. We need to switch vehicles here. This vehicle is not working for us. This vehicle is just crashing into the iceberg over and over again. Our housing starts have been down for 3 years in a row, and it's just, distraction and, hey, look at what's going on over here with America. It's like, what about us? Like, what about what's going on here?
It's theater. We have such a self-sustaining country that we're not being sustaining. We're not focusing on our own backyard.
You hit it on the head when you say it's theater. Like, to me, it just looks like they're acting. Like, I look like I'm watching America act, and I'm watching the different Canadian players act, and I'm thinking, you're poor actors, and you seem to forget history very quickly. But I think the people that have been living through this and watching,
suffering,
we don't forget.
No.
I remember, there's lots of things that I remember regarding trade and where we lost a lot of ground. And it was all signed away by one person. Like, one person decided that he was going to sign, and he was a lawyer, a labor trade lawyer, and he signed off our resources, and his famous speech online is he felt I. It was all, when you listen to him speak about why he signed off our resources the way he did. He didn't use, it wasn't about Canada and us and our manufacturing and our resources. It was, I feel good, I this, I that. So I listen to that speech every once in a while just to remind myself about how centered that individual was that signed off our resources in the 80s. There's nothing they can really gain, I don't think. I don't think there's anything for America to really gain by taking Canada. I chuckle at that, and I don't pay it too much attention because they have everything they want from us. Like, there's not.
They're already getting it all.
They get all our resources now. Like,
They've
what would they want us for?
The better end of the deal. They've always had the better end of the deal. And I think it's not that we want to become a bully and turn around and start saying, well, if you're going to strong arm us, then we're going to strong arm you. That's not the relationship that we want to have.
No.
Right? We want to work together, right? And we're definitely going to stay separate countries. We're not going to become governorships and all this crap that's being talked right now. That's just someone down south just flexing. That's all it is.
It's distraction.
You're right. It's 100% theater. And right now, unfortunately, I hope a lot of Canadians realize the whole Carney show showing up on Stewart's show. I don't get that. I don't get, that's more theater. Why are you going to go down and speak to the Americans? Well, you're supposed to be a Canadian, but you're not. And then, right now their PR firms are just trying to get rid of certain things that are going on and that they've done in the past. And everyone tries to paint a positive picture now. And I'm like, no, we should not be forgetting what any of these individuals did or are doing currently right now or plan on doing this year. If we're lucky, we will get an election this year, right? If we're lucky. But there is still a chance that Carney can get in there and push it to 26 because the Liberals can take their sweet time on trying to figure out who the new leadership is, right? So it's a little scary going on. We're not at the end right now. That's the problem. They've extended the finish line. That's all they've done, which is really, really scary, right?
And there's the Brookfield connection there. So for me, I watch Carney, the involvement of the chairman of Brookfield. And I also watch the Crown Corporation, the Federal Crown Corporation, Canada Mortgage and Housing, been around since the 40s, was knocked out of first place to third place in 2021 on mortgage default insurance by Brookfield's Sagen, which is it's a Brookfield corporation. So mortgage default insurance since 2021, the number one issuer of mortgage default insurance in Canada is Brookfield's Sagen. It used to be CMHC. People still call it CMHC all the time, but CMHC's been knocked to third place.
We got a lot to talk about, Nina. I want to share all the information. www, you can find her at Nina Deeb at ninadeeb.com, also under 7minutes.com, or .ca, sorry, 7minutes.ca. And then we're going to talk about your new book, which is 7 Minutes Straight Talk on Housing, the housing crisis, basically. Launching first week of February?
February 1st.
February 1st, right? And then on social, you can find her under her own name, Nina Deeb. It's NINADEB under Facebook, IG.
Instagram, LinkedIn.
Because you're a realtor. You've been in the realtor
X.
space for a long time.
Almost 30 years.
Wow. So you've seen the landscape change.
Significantly.
Yeah, a lot. Not necessarily for the betterment of the Canadian people.
It's regressive.
Mm-hmm. Which is unfortunate because we have so much potential. So much. I think true Canadians really care about this country and they want to continue seeing it grow because that's what we saw our parents do. Parents came here, they immigrated, and they contributed and they grew it. And then everybody grew it. And then we all worked together and we grew it. We're not growing this country. We're tearing it down.
People are leaving.
You got to wonder where all these politicians are going to go. I know that they go to corporations. I know that they're already doing job interviewing and all kinds of stuff. They don't care the mess that's been left behind. Like you said, the vehicle's dying and they don't care about staying on the side of the road and figuring out, how do I fix this? No, I'm just going to order another vehicle and get out of here.
Some of the politicians don't even wait very long to switch from a politician, for the public, to the private corporation that benefited from the changes that they made. Like Christine Elliott, the Minister of Health, look where she is now. She's with private equity corporation benefiting off of the privatization that occurred while she was the Minister of Health. Straight there, like she made a beeline, like, all right. And you watch these lawyers do these moves and you think, we see you. Like, we see what you're doing. Like, you're wearing hats, the conflict of interest hats when you behave this way. You don't get to be the government that makes the changes and then the private equity that benefits from the changes 5 minutes later. But that's what happens.
I'm wearing Chris Carpenter's hoodie today. It's been a while since I've spoken to Chris. Good guy. He does a lot of good trim work in his team and everything like that. But I want to ask you, I know that off mic we were talking, you said you started this book one way and you were planning on going down a different path. And then I guess during the process of writing the book, it became a new path, right?
That's right.
You want to just share a little bit about that? And
originally I was writing a book for the industry, like for realtors. And there's about 112,000 of us in Ontario now, which has doubled in the last few years, but there's about 100,000. So originally it was a very small group that this book would have been for, but it was more like a textbook type of idea that I was creating. But partway through, I got a call from a member of parliament that asked me a few questions about my submissions. And I realized that my submissions, so my work that I had been doing at the government level of making my submissions and testifying, I realized that my work was being buried, that it wasn't that easily accessible to even politicians unless they happened to be on that committee that happened to have heard. So I speak before different committees, all even within the Ontario legislature. You're in front of different committees on different things, and it's all housing related, but I have to go to different committees because the work is chopped up between different ministries, and the responsibilities, nobody's really that responsible. It's like, oh, it's over here, oh, it's consumer protection, oh, it's the Minister of Public Services, or it's the sometimes the changes are through the justice system, so I show up on those changes when it's regarding tribunals. But trying to keep it, and then I think if members of parliament can't find it. How can anybody else? And then I started assembling them, putting them together. And I myself was shocked when I started and put together what I had done. And I'm like looking at it, I'm thinking, holy crow, like I've done a lot. I've been doing a lot over the years, trying to get trying to move us in the right direction. But sometimes a lot of it was ignored. Much of it was ignored, but much of it is still true. It should have happened. Like the things that I had suggested should have, we should have been doing those things. And I haven't changed my points. I haven't changed my suggestions. They still stay the same. There's certain things that we need to do for housing to be affordable. And a lot of it is removing corporations that don't produce anything, and they're making things more expensive for consumers. Do you know what changed since the last time I saw you, actually? One of the things I spoke, Tarion. The maximum Tarion fee was like, I think $1,600 or $1,700. Maximum, $6,000. It's gone up 343%.
Didn't we last talk about Tarion changing it's becoming something else now?
Now there's two of them. So they've severed themselves into two things. Now we have Tarion 1 and Tarion 2, which is the HCRA. And the HCRA, they just point the finger at each other. Like,
what are they doing?
It's Tarion's job. Oh, it's HCRA's job.
When you confront them and you bring up this fact of them playing ignorant and not paying attention to answering your questions or your requests, that's technically their job. It's like you going to a drywaller and going, listen, when you're going to start hanging drywall? I'm not asking the plumber. I'm asking the person who's hanging the drywall. So when you ask these politicians, these members, are you going to address this? Do they just simply flat out ignore and not respond?
The system's set up to not really be able to change it, is how I'm thinking it. Like the last HCRA annual meeting, they shut the time down. Like, we have democracy with these private corporations that have the job of what used to be government. We have a democracy for like between 30 and 45 minutes a year where you can ask them questions in a public forum. Sometimes
a year.
So that's the annual meetings. You can read their annual reports and you can ask them questions. So this year, the minister, the critic for consumer protection, actually showed up at the HCRA meeting and asked them a question. And actually, one of the things he'd said, because they were shutting down questions early, he'd said, like when you advertise something, like there's going to be questions for a certain amount of time, like you should stay open for that time. He just made that suggestion, and that he just said, I'm the critic for consumer protection, and this is what. So they would shut you down early. You get to ask one question, maybe sometimes maybe two. You stand up at a microphone, and they shut you down early. They just take most of the time.
Do they answer the question?
Not really. It's a very long answer, dancing around. Like it's like a legal dance on the response.
We've seen a lot of that in the last 10 years with the Liberal Party. They've never answered a question. They've danced quite a bit, right?
It's a skill. It's a skill that they seem to be taught of how to not answer questions. But, the best one is when you ask a question. It's like, I'm just over here trying to build housing. I'm just trying to get shovels in the ground.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not doing anything. Like, you're stalling. You are like going down. Our housing starts are going down, not up. All this, I'm trying to build more housing. And the interventions just make it worse. More and more interventions making it worse.
What's the government saying now regarding, because it's clearly obvious that housing starts are down, like dramatically down, not a little bit, down. Like all new pre-con condos stop. That's it, done. Whatever's in the ground right now working, that's what's going on, but there's nothing new going on. What's their response nowadays? What are they saying the reason why everything's housing is down?
Well, apparently Ontario has different interest rates than the rest of Canada. This is what the Ontario government's response is. It's the interest rates.
What's causing the...
Oh, yeah, it's the interest rates. It's like, but the interest rates are the same in BC. They're the same in... So it's not interest rates because other provinces' housing is up and ours is down. So it's the government that's in the way. When other provinces... We've had this government for 6 years, and actually in the audit report on the Greenbelt scandal, It says right in there, Doug Ford says that we have a housing crisis now that we didn't have in 2018. Well, we didn't have you until 2018. So you've identified yourself that you're the problem. It's like right in there. Doug Ford says that we have a housing crisis
That's not
now
what I said, though.
that we didn't have in 2018. It's like, so you're the problem, dude. Like, it's time for you to go.
Unfortunately, he'll get reelected.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
Nope. No.
You think Crombie will actually get in?
I don't think that, I'm not very positive on Crombie either. I think Merritt Stiles has a very good chance because people are furious over housing and they're furious over the wealth transfers that have been going on.
Attention contractors and construction professionals. Do you feel like your expenses are way too high? Imagine cutting your spending by 28%. At Schooley Mitchell, they dig deep to help you save on essential expenses that could be impacting your bottom line. Their risk-free analysis allows you to concentrate on your trade while they find those savings for you. Don't let extra expenses keep you from achieving the success you deserve. Reach out today to schedule your risk-free analysis and unlock your savings. Find them at www.schooleymitchell.com/office/AEGIUGGIO/about. Or reach out to them at erica.giugio@schooleymitchell.com. This message is proudly supported by the Construction Life.
The wealth transfers are very obvious, but the Ontario Place deal has people, like there was a
but it's happening.
Court case. It's being forced.
Yeah.
Like they're actually changing the legislation.
I don't get that.
As
I don't
they're
get that
going.
in Canada. Does it happen in America as well too, where it's like, we stopped you from doing this. You shouldn't be doing this, but it's still happening. Why are you doing this?
They change the laws, they go. And when they're not getting their way, they pull out the notwithstanding clause. So the people that we've elected are suing us all the time. Like they've got us in court all the time. And people don't realize that when they say the Ford government's challenging, they're appealing, they're this, they're that. That's our money. They're lawfaring us. So we're spending all this money on lawfare. And our deficit, like Ontario's debt has climbed.
Since Ford? It's been a
$91 billion. 27% increase in Ontario's debt.
Where has it all gone when they're already taking a big portion of all development fees to develop any kind of housing? They're taking 1/3.
So that's totally separate. Like the development fees are municipal, right? The development, so that's taxation. So the money that used to get downloaded to not have all these development fees, it's because they're not downloading. The province and the federal government are not doing the downloads they used to for certain things, like infrastructure. And they change how they pay for things. Oh, we upload education in the 90s, right? We downloaded this, we upload this. But what doesn't get downloaded, so responsibilities are downloaded, but not money. Right? And I keep like this, we're going to build housing. It's like, with what? What are you building housing with? Like wishes and dreams? Are you going to hope? You talk about the dream of home ownership. It is a dream if there's no budgeting or plan. Like we say we have a plan, but there's no money behind this plan.
They're more focused on media sound bites.
Yeah.
Just hitting certain words and getting it out into the mass media, which unfortunately for me, I don't pay attention to. Like I can't watch any mainstream media because I don't trust any mainstream media. So I can't listen to it. So then I kind of do my own homework, no different than how you've done your own homework to kind of build out this book and try to educate more people about what's really going on. So obviously the powers that be are not going to be happy about your book or your words that you're sharing because this is stuff that you've constantly tried to get in front of them to address, to discuss, to have a civil adult conversation about making Canada a better place to possibly build and live in. Right? Now you're getting it out to the masses where people can actually start reading this and discovering for themselves, this is what's really going on behind the curtain. They won't like that. We
can't afford the debt that we've been incurring. Like the level of debt that Ontario has been incurring, even like the debt for the Ontario Place deal, right? Like where's the cash register for Ontario Place? Where does the $2.2 billion come from? I've read that lease 4 times at least. And then I've been doing like daily clips on it since I finished reading it maybe about a week after it was out. And I had gone through and highlighted.
How many pages?
It's 300 pages. And then the auditor report came out, and I read that. And then I was taking parts of the auditor report and referencing it back to the lease. So I've been going really hard on that lease for like months. Even when I was away, and I would do a daily clip every day, and I'd put it on.
But it's still moving forward. It's still
moving forward, but I've put a lot of things on the record of, but the biggest thing is, how are we paying for this? How are we paying for this Ontario place, this $2.2 billion?
That's right now.
And the income on it's only worth $163 million, the 95 years worth of income on that thing. So it's the auditor
per year, or for the whole term?
The whole term. Today's dollar of the rent that's payable on Ontario Place for Therma is only $163 million, and our cost is $2.237 billion.
Who's doing this ROI? I don't understand how this is getting...
Well, it's a real estate transaction. It was actually Infrastructure Ontario had it classified as a real estate transaction. So we're just the public looking to dispose of our lands. We're just a client out there wanting to list our lands to dispose of them, and they treat it as a real estate transaction rather than as a procurement. No other city's waterfront for the comparables. They had comparables within the within their report. Nobody else's waterfront was treated like ours. Only Ontario Place was treated as a real estate transaction, and all the other waterfront developments were treated as procurements and through a procurement process. So it was closed, and they removed public input, public consultation. Consultations began 30 days after the lease was signed. So all this goes on for years. They did 17 of them, and afterwards people are like, Nina, you're coming. It's already like, what am I going? Like, you're going to consult after the fact? It's a comment period. I'm going to show up and make some comments. Right, you're consulting after something is signed. That's not. Do the
comments at least get put into the
consultation? No, not really. Sometimes they allow the corporation itself to be the host of the consultation. I've had that happen where the video never gets released. They actually never release the records of what happened during the meeting.
Do you remember back in the, I would say the 70s and 80s, how Montreal was like the corrupt capital of Canada? How it was just an infrastructure of corrupt, whether that was, crime in general or the politicians themselves. Are we at a point where now Montreal has been surpassed by Ontario, like Quebec? Now Ontario has become the hub now, because it just, between the Ontario Place, between the Science Centre, between the LRT, between so many projects that are going on in the city where you don't see any growth in the city. But there's a lot of projects going on, but there's no growth. That's basically just blatant corruption at that point. People are just, it's a shell game. People are just moving money from one place to another.
We have the same Crown Corporation involved in all this, right? Infrastructure Ontario,
so and
Metrolinx. They have the same CEO now. Like the CEO of Infrastructure Ontario is now the CEO of Metrolinx. So the money that's being lost is within the Crown Corporation or the agency that's taken on the job. So we give a certain amount of work to these crowns or these agencies that are created, but you look at the corporation itself. It's like, if I look at the work that you're doing, I can tell whose side you're on or who you're working for. I look at Infrastructure Ontario as a Crown Corporation and that lease that they signed. So Infrastructure Ontario CEO signed that lease. That's who signed it. He signed a lease that traps so a Crown Corporation signed a lease that traps our Crown in arbitration. Why on earth would you do that? And I was asked, what are the points you don't like about the lease? I said the number one thing is Schedule D, which any dispute that we have with that tenant, with Therma, any dispute, we can't go to court unless they allow us to. Unless the tenant allows us to go to a court to take up any dispute we have with the tenant, we're stuck in arbitration, which is going to be located somewhere in Toronto. Like, I'm thinking it's one of these high rises that don't pay taxes. But the dispute, so the location of dispute resolution will be somewhere in Toronto. And if you read Schedule D, if you don't read any part of that at all, but just read the 5 pages, I think it's about 5 pages of Schedule D, and see what the powers these arbitrators have. They have powers as if they're a court. The decisions are not disputable or appealable, even if they're wrong in law, even if there's error. So if you read those 5 pages and say, this is what our Crown Corporation committed us to in a 95-year lease with this tenant, that when we have a problem, all the tenant has to do to not pay their utilities is just keep them in appeal. If their utilities are in appeal, they don't have to pay the utilities to the city. Like they can just they can appeal their taxes and just not be making payments. It's so one-sided. Like if I looked at, if you were to say to me, if you didn't tell me who Infrastructure Ontario was and say, here's the deal and here's this, and you said to me, who are these people? Who's Infrastructure Ontario? I was like, that's the real estate agent of the tenant. That's what I would say. That's the tenant's real estate agent.
So label it as such.
That's what I would say. That is not a Crown Corporation that traps our Crown in arbitration. If you're a Crown Corporation, you're not a Crown Corporation of this country. You're somebody else's Crown Corporation. So this is a very ugly deal they got us into. Very ugly.
How do we change all this? How do we...
We have to change. The Ford government definitely has to go, and I think people are mad enough now to just really. I think he's going to be Mulrooneyed, and he has a Mulrooney in the House, which is responsible for all our spending. So the Treasury Board's president is Caroline Mulrooney. All this spending that's going on right now in Ontario, that's who's running our Treasury. And the other gentleman, he's from private equity too, the Minister of Finance. Like he's from TD Bank. Finance, like they literally came out of private equity, and they didn't run their businesses this way. That when they were working for private equity, but when they're running our business, when they're running the Ontario finances, they have mortgaged us into oblivion.
At what point do Canadians wake up and realize, because we're already being taxed to such extremes, right? At what point do Canadians start to realize, hang on a sec, you can't continue doing this to us, right? Are they going to all start speaking up, or they actually believe that voting another government in is going to magically just change everything, reduce taxes? Child this week alone, she already increased. She says there's going to be another increase for Toronto residents. Didn't she run on a platform where she wasn't going to be doing all this stuff, but now it's being done? There's
certain things she has no control of because she's going to get pressured, like things like the Toronto Police Service budget, which grows and grows and grows. Toronto Police Service has more budget than all of Ontario for housing. That's in my book.
And again, I don't see it on the streets.
The only time I see Toronto Police Service when I go to Toronto is when they're protecting construction sites. Yeah, like I walk around, there's like what are they doing? Like they're protecting, they're in front of construction sites, they're blocking off traffic for the concrete trucks to go in.
And they're being compensated very well for that. Just because they carry a uniform and they have a pistol with them, right? They're not actually policing at that point. They're just a glorified security guard for that construction site, but they're compensated very well.
Police are important, but it's been far removed from local policing. Policing used to be local as well. Like we used to have so many. You had your 1 or 2 cops in your village, but it just got bigger and bigger. Like even within where I live, like we got amalgamated in the 70s by Bill Davis. So our towns became Cambridge, and then the region was created. So Waterloo Region was created, where before it was a county. So it was created into a region that became that's when the 2-tier municipalities that we lost a lot of power on our land planning with Bill 185. Okay. We were one of them. So Wilmot Farms is within my region. So when they pull things up, you lose control on, like locally. Like for me, I'm in a town, but now it's like been pulled up a few times on the policing to see where your police budget and how it grows and what it is that they're doing. They do less and less. So the police are doing less. More things are privatized, like condominium living. If you live in a condominium and you have a problem in your condominium, it's the Condominium Authority of Ontario. Like you're under this tribunal arbitration rules now again. They can fine you if maybe your dog pooped and you didn't pick it up, and it's just an arbitration snowball, like one arbitration snowball after the other. It's social justice. So instead of the government doing the job anymore or the police doing the job anymore, it's being pushed out to through social justice, where it's volunteers sitting on boards, and there's usually a side corporation there of some kind funneling a lot of money to itself and sitting on billions of dollars in reserves. Like
the government
Terrion.
is collecting all that money through taxes,
Yeah.
but they're not using it for the purpose of what they're collecting it, saying we need this increase, but we're not using it to actually solve problems.
How much property taxes do these high-rise condos charge? And you don't have policing really with them. Like you'll have policing. You know when you have policing with these condos now? When the condo board's assassinated, the police show up and they shoot the shooter. That's what happened in Vaughan. Like that was a
Recently?
3 years ago in Vaughan, the condo board was shot by somebody in the building over a dispute. And it was over new powers that were given to the Condominium Authority of Ontario.
Wow.
They were new powers. Those powers, they didn't have them before. So within a year of the new powers being given to this privatized entity used to be the government's job. You used to be able to call the police. You used to be able to have other options available to you. But like I just look and say there's a failure within 1 year. 1 year, a condo board was assassinated, and the person that had a dispute with that condo board was shot by the police. So is that our solution? Is that how we're doing things now?
When it comes to spray foam and blown-in insulation for your next project, there's no better team than Mohammed and his crew at Foamit. With well-educated, skilled installers, Foamit doesn't just get the job done, they do it right. They take the time to properly estimate and educate you on every aspect of your project, ensuring your building envelope is airtight and energy efficient. As leaders in the industry, they bring a deep understanding of building science to every job, making sure your project stands the test of time. But don't just take their word for it. Past clients constantly praise the quality of work and professionalism of the Foamit team. From homeowners to large-scale contractors, feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, with clients appreciating their attention to detail, the thoroughness of their crew, and the results that speak for themselves. At Foamit, they pride themselves on building lasting relationships through exceptional service, reliability, and the commitment to exceeding expectations on every single project. Whether you're insulating a new build, upgrading an older property, or tackling a commercial project, Foamit is your trusted partner in achieving energy efficiency and comfort. They understand the importance of getting it right the first time, and that's why so many clients return to them for future projects. Connect with Foamit today. Reach them at 416-893-8712 or 647-961-9777. Email them at mohammed@foamit.ca or visit them at www.foamit.ca. Follow them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn to see their latest projects and innovations. This message is proudly supported by the Construction Life. How was it resolved? Did it just continue the same way?
Oh yeah, they just keep adding more powers. Actually, I've said that. That's one of the things I said at the legislature. It's like, yeah, this is fatal. Like, this is a failure. Like, this board was assassinated. And you carry on with doing more of this?
It's just
You're
a matter
still
of time.
doing more?
Yeah.
You're still going to more tribunals, more privatization of disputes. And then you've got the condominium authority, like they can be charging fines. And there are fines without, it keeps coming back to fines without hearings. Here we go. When the first time I spoke out against fines without hearings, it was for realtors only. And I said, it won't remain. It doesn't stay like this. First you sell the idea, then they start benchmarking it to everything else. And next thing, it's a part of our economy. This has become a part of our economy. And I said it would then, and people will say, you're being extreme. No, it's only for realtors. It's only for this. How can these corporations that are producing nothing, how do they get to charge fines without hearings by arbitration? And they're sitting on billions of dollars in reserve funds while we owe $429 billion. We owe $429 billion. And these corporations, 60,000 of them, pay nothing. They pay nothing. And some of them have $1 billion themselves sitting in reserve or more.
So it's such a corrupt system. Like, how are you going to change this where people are just so used to, it's ingrained now. I've never heard of any kind of government policy that's been put in, temporarily or whatever, ever been removed. It's been masked at something else, basically.
British Columbia did it. British Columbia, they revamped their real estate sector in 2016. They pulled the authority back
Really?
Because they said, yeah, BC did do it. They did. There's a precedent for that. I think they've gone backwards now again. I haven't paid as much attention to it lately because I'm really wrapped up here in Ontario. But no, BC did do it. They pulled back the authority. These administrative agreements, the government can always take their authority back. So, and they have the power to. They have the power to tear things up. They've done it before. They've shown us how they've done that with the beer contract. It's like getting beer, liberating beer early, and it isn't that I'm against beer being sold or in other places. It's that why early? Like, why do we pay the penalty to do this early?
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, and it's one thing, if it, but why make us pay more now? Why are you making us pay more to do this? Why are we paying these big penalties? So it's like paying your mortgage out early and taking a penalty just for the hell of it. Like that's what they do to us over and over again. We pay these penalties. They get us in these situations where we're paying penalties. The Ontario Place lease, there's a $30 million penalty sitting there for us that we could cancel it. They only have a $5 million deposit on that lease. They make a offer. They've got their lease there with a $5 million deposit. And for us to cancel it, it's $30 million.
It doesn't make any sense. Have they started putting shovels into the Science Center? Not yet?
No.
What about the Greenbelt?
Well, the Greenbelt, they made changes with that they allowed not one single witness to speak on. When they reversed back their Greenbelt changes, only Minister Paul Calandra, was the only person. He took up the whole hour of testimony. Nobody else was allowed to speak but him. And they made changes. But the changes that they made, pretending that they were undoing the changes they did with the Greenbelt, they came in the back door with Bill 185. So Bill 185, you always know a bill is a real big deal when I'm not allowed to speak on it. When I registered to speak on something, and it's like, we're not having her. We're not going to have that one. But
did they have anybody speak on it?
Yes.
How
And
many
I was the
people?
first person to register on that, probably. Like within, like as soon as it came out of
But then
their
they didn't
mouth,
give you
and I was
any
like,
time.
boom. I did send in written submissions on it. It had actually had 2 EROs attached to it, and because I'm in Waterloo Region and I was very involved with the Wilmot Farms and what was happening with the expropriations for nothing. Like, we're just expropriating land, their farms, and nobody knows why, as we're assembling farms, and the provinces, the money behind it, that came out. It was just so much secrecy, and people are sitting there just trying to run their lives on their farms, and they don't know, should I this, should I that? I have a crop in the field. They shredded, Waterloo Region did buy one of the farms and shredded the crop that was in the field, I think a week or two before it would have been harvested, a corn crop. They brought in shredders, and they just went through and shredded the crops on the one farm that they did purchase. Why wouldn't you wait I think it was a week or two out from being harvest ready, why wouldn't you wait and not waste it? But they just wasted it.
Did they have a response on why? Did anybody answer that question?
Well, there was they actually just brought forth a motion to say that they wouldn't do that again. There was already
Oh, they
done by
wouldn't do
time
the
it was
mistake that they already
something
done?
along that lines. But there was some people that went and spoke on it, like when it actually happened.
I don't understand why the
They
public...
took tractors to Waterloo Region. So the tractors came from all over. There was about 50 of them. It was on the news. And they were on the highway. The tractors were coming on the highway, and they went right into downtown Kitchener. It's one of my most popular videos that I posted, actually. I was so excited. I did go and speak because I think I was the only non-farmer to go. It's like, I'm not a farmer, but I eat food.
Yeah, you respect what they do.
I
and
need
how
food.
vital they are, yeah.
So they let me speak for 3 minutes because I wasn't pre-registered. I think you can only speak for 5, and then they let me speak for 3 minutes. But I did speak for 3 minutes. But I was just sitting at home, and I said, I think I'm gonna run down there, and I'm gonna do this to my husband. As I said to him, I'm gonna run downtown and see what's going on. I got there, and just the tractors everywhere. It was so exciting. So exciting. So I did a little clip, and I said, all these tractors came from all over Waterloo Region to support the Wilmot farmers. That's really all it was. Well, that video did very well. People really liked that. They were so happy to see all these tractors downtown Kitchener. You stand next to them, they're so huge, like the tires.
Tires are massive, yeah.
Right? And the rumbling of these tractors, yeah, it was very exciting.
What was the government using the land for?
I think we still don't know what they want it for.
They haven't even started any development on that land, but it was such a hurry to get rid of the crops.
Yeah, they just they wanted to have large land to get together, like large put together pieces for manufacturing or to encourage industry to come to Canada. But, we're burning down Canadian businesses to bring in foreign businesses because agriculture is a huge employer. It isn't just that they give us food. They're also a very large employer, and I don't feel that they get acknowledgement for the jobs that that agriculture
or fair market value for what they do.
Yeah. And some of the farmers that have been there, like they're third and fourth generation farmers, and their like farm is their business. There's a cabbage farm there. There's a cheese factory farm.
It's hard enough for them to even pass it down into the family that they may or may not have to keep it going, because obviously certain farmers outlive, and then they don't know if they have children or family members that want to maintain it or continue it.
The young family members have actually spoken out to say, like, this is my family business. We're farmers, and I want to continue being a farmer. And the expropriations it's super expropriation.
Supporting these people.
So the Greenbelt, like what they did with the Greenbelt, like undoing that. Then they did Bill 185. So Bill 185, they came in the back door. Like they closed the front door and they came in the back door. And they say, and we're not going to allow certain people to speak on this.
Nina, do you get in your book, talking about the whole electrification and climate change and all the initiatives that the government, and whether it's at municipal or provincial or federal level, starts adding towards building costs and housing costs, and because it's starting to fatten up the costs of these homes now to do things that I completely disagree with. We do not need to do any of this shit, despite what Carney keeps on talking about, this global climate initiative crap. Like, it's all horse shit. But now it's being forced upon building. And you've got builders that are not going to absorb these fees. They're going to pass it on to the clients. So the homeowner is going to see an increase in nothing decorative. And the argument is going to be, we're saving the planet. Canada, for the most part, is not destroying the planet. Nothing that we're doing here is significantly destroying the planet. But yet we're trying to be the forefront of making sure everybody pays into the self-made destruction of the planet. Do you get into that? Do you talk about?
Only a little bit. It's only a little bit.
Okay.
It's about the carbon tax. So I did get into it on the one bill about the carbon tax, about why we even have one. Because, we wouldn't have one if it weren't for our current government canceling what we already had. So I do get into it about that. For me, it's a lot of, where's the money going? Right, the money's going here, going there, but we're not funding the things that we say are important. We're funding highways. Like I came by, I was on the empty 407. I had it all to myself. It was me and a 407 truck, and we were just riding alongside. It's like, hey, just me and him, nobody else.
Another deal that went bad by selling it after it was paid for by tax dollars.
And they keep raising the fees, and we forgave them $1 billion. We gave them $1 billion forgiveness 2 years ago because it was underused. So the 407 was underused. They didn't hit their threshold.
Who agreed to that? Was
Ford.
That was Ford?
He forgave $1 billion to the 407, and the reason, so this isn't market. No market operates this way. This isn't market forces. If you overprice your product, you're supposed to reduce it so that it's being used for usership. They've increased the fees because they've learned that if they don't hit certain ridership, if it's empty, that they can just get forgiven money that they owe us. So we're the ones that don't get paid our money if the ridership's not there. That's the precedent that's been set with that $1 billion forgiveness to the operators of the 407. So we forgive them $1 billion. They have money in the bank. Like it's CPP Investments is the largest, that's more than 50% of who that tri-party there is running the 407. So we forgive them the $1 billion. They have billions and billions in the bank, and we are borrowing money at the same time. So that $1 billion, we didn't have it to begin with. I consider that borrowed money. You didn't just forgive the $1 billion. We now have $1 billion of debt that's growing interest, and the lowest interest rate we've paid on this debt in the last 35 years is 3.4%. 3%, I think, was the lowest. That was part of my last submission. The lowest
on what amount?
On as the debt grows, the lowest that we've paid on our debt was, I think, 3.2. It's in my publication.
Okay.
And the highest was 10.9. So if you look at, and that's like the Ontario Place deal costing us 2.27, I consider that money financed. Because cash register, there's no cash register there at Ontario Place that has $2.237 billion in it.
No.
We don't take the money from it. So we're going to invest this money. Investing is for people that have money. If you don't have the money to invest, you must take into account the cost of borrowing that money.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that. There's no financial case for Ontario Place. They didn't say to us, here's how much it's costing you to do this with the $2.237 billion now. We've spent that money now. We're going to collect the other money over 95 years. And it's only equivalent. The value today is only $163 million. So we collect $163 million over 95 years, and we've paid $2.237 billion. And then somebody says, well, you got a new Ontario Science Centre or that. It's like, we already had one.
Yeah.
We already had one. We had an Ontario Science Centre. It was, I thought it was a fantastic building
There was
myself.
nothing wrong with that building.
No.
It
The roof's
served a
still
lot
fine.
of purposes. Yeah.
The building materials of the Ontario Science Centre was built in 1967.
Something like that.
With materials of 1967. So it had everything that was used at the time. What were you using? We were still using asbestos. There's lots of things we were still using. Hot water radiant systems were very popular. But we don't tear all these houses down that we built around that time. And it wasn't just commercial that was being built around that time or a museum. Those are the materials that we were using then. Those were the building materials of the day. And the roofing panels they were talking about.
The leaking crap, yeah.
Like what they're made of, and then Doug Ford's like, well, you can't just fix it with a shingle. It's like, well,
sure you can.
It's
not
like,
with a shingle, but yes, you can.
You can change the whole roofing system if you really wanted to.
And actually, from my understanding, engineers and architects stepped up,
Yes,
willing
they
to
did.
do it for pro bono. They were more than interested in doing it, but they didn't want to do that because Ford already made the deal. That deal was made. So build the future you dream of with Generation Construction. Your home is where life happens, where your style shines, and where your future begins. Whether it's your first home, a space for growing family, or a place all your own, you need a builder who understands your vision and brings it to life. At Generation Construction, they ensure your home is everything you've imagined. Greg, the visionary behind Generation Construction, knows that today's homeowners, they want more than just walls. They want a space that reflects who they are. At Generation Construction, they don't just build houses, they craft homes that are uniquely yours. With a reputation for excellence, trust, and a commitment to working with the best, Generation Construction offers a seamless, stress-free experience that ensures your home stands strong for years to come. Contact Generation Construction today at 705-961-5562 in the Muskoka area and 647-381-0361 in the Greater Toronto area, or visit them at www.generationconstructionltd.com. For inquiries, email Greg at greg@generationconstructionltd.com. Let's build your dream project together. This message is proudly supported by the Construction Life.
You know, part of the reason I wrote the book, I was actually going to speak on a bill. I was on the GO train, and I got a phone call from a member of Parliament, and Bobby Ann Brady. And she said it was the bill I was coming to speak on was the Real Estate Management, Better Real Estate Management Act, or something about how our real estate is managed, the provincial assets. So I was coming in to speak on that, and she called me and she said, "You're our only witness. You're the only person coming to speak on this. And I heard you speak on another bill before, and I was just wondering, like, the relation." And she was the one that made me realize that her being on that committee, she doesn't have access to my other work. That was around, I thought, they can't just type something into their computer and just everything comes up and, okay, here's all this. It's not accessible to all of them. They have to go looking for it. So that was part of the reason that I did decide to publish these, because I thought, if you can't find it, but I was the only person in all of Ontario that registered for that bill, and a lot of it was regarding the Ontario Science Centre. That was one of the reasons and I had said, well, we have Infrastructure Ontario mismanaging our assets, and then letting them fall in disrepair. And then they come out with a business case saying it must be torn down or moved. But Infrastructure Ontario wanted to move the Ontario Science Centre since 2019. They just let it go fall in disrepair. It's actually in the records that they've been wanting to move it since 2019 to Ontario Place. Not just move it. They wanted to move it to Ontario Place site.
The question of moving it is not the question to be asked. It's the question of what's going to replace it. We should be asking what that's going to be. And if it's just more condos and more developing, and you've got friends of somebody, and then they're getting a deal, and then that's where, do we not have any more managers? Like, we've never had managers running this country, this province, this city. We don't. We get popularity contests. We get people who get in by saying choice words, and then people vote them in, whether they vote them in, and then they get in and they start doing whatever they want to do. But they're not managers. They don't. If they were to run any of our businesses, if they were run mom and pop shops, they would all be done. They wouldn't be operating right now because of the way that they're managing these businesses. Our city, our province, our country, they're all businesses, and they're being poorly managed by all these individuals. At some point, like, what's going to happen?
We have like 80% waste or something. Like I read some report where like the amount of money that goes to consulting and talking and meetings.
Advising
we
and
meet
legal
to consult, to think, to maybe we're going to plan in the future to have another consultation and another meeting, and then we're going to talk about it some more. We talk so long that that we either wind up with penalties because we've talked too long. Actually, that happened with the I think that happened with the Ontario Place lease too. The Infrastructure Ontario was in talks with Therma as to what their utility requirements would be, and they had to provide it by December 31st, like a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And if they didn't, then they could start layering penalties of $250,000 every 180 days and the $30 million penalty. And the day came and went, and I went and spoke on the budget. I think it was early in December, and I said, the clock is ticking. We have to cancel this. We are obligated to provide the interim utility services by December 31st this year. Otherwise, we are incurring a $30 million penalty and layers of fees of $250,000 every 180 days. It wasn't canceled. Now, they could have, and the way it was worded in the auditor report, it said that when the auditor asked about Infrastructure Ontario told them that they were going to be in discussions with the tenant until December 31st. So they're going to be in discussions until the day they're supposed to meet the actual condition. We're in discussions until then. And nobody knows what happened with this. Like, they don't tell us. They're not reporting back. Chances are we probably have a penalty there. They could have signed an amendment to say we're going to extend it another 6 months or another year. We don't know. They could have like contracted to extend it because there was it was brought to light. I brought that to light at committee, and I said, there's a penalty coming in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, $30 million.
Nobody responded? Nobody acknowledged?
Oh, yes. No, I did get response, actually. Okay. No,
but they let it lapse. So now we're on the hook.
We don't know. I don't know what they did. They never told us. The government's closed, and they haven't told us. Infrastructure Ontario is not responding to us and to the public to tell us what's going on. We don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
Now, what exactly are they building on the Ontario Place? They're building a spa, right? Like, what is it that's being built there?
They say it's a spa. It's probably going to be, the suspicions it's going to be a casino. It's huge. It's so huge. Like, I don't know what we would need I don't know who would need a spa like this, like the size of a football field. Who needs a spa like that? What do you do? And the height of this thing, like, it's also very tall. What do you need it for? Something that big?
Oh, I know why you need it.
And then there's rights. There's actually restrictive covenants with that lease as well on the views, the water views, and the water lots. And there's so many.
Yeah, I'm sure the island people must be up in arms about this. They usually are. I mean, they were up in arms about Billy Bishop, right? And all of a sudden that still happened and that still went forward. But this is, in my opinion, bigger than Billy Bishop, like regarding a structure, like in the way of their view.
Majority governments can change the law as they go, and that's what they do. Like, they brought in the New Deal for Toronto Act, which took away the City of Toronto's power on the Redeveloping Ontario Act. The New Deal for Toronto Act was pregnant with another act. So within the New Deal for Toronto Act is the Redeveloping Ontario Place Act. And the Redeveloping Ontario Place Act takes away power from the mother, from the City of Toronto.
These guys are just magicians, huh?
Yeah. So it was like two within, and then they're being rolled out, and I keep saying there's many moving parts to all this legislation. But the City of Toronto, like the New Deal Act that they got in 2023, it was very bad for them. Very bad for the City of Toronto.
Yeah.
But that's what they got. And within that act, they lost power and they had a meeting a couple days ago. A lot of people come to speak at the City of Toronto about Ontario Place. I get busy with like my real estate work, and I'm not going to quite a bit of it, right? I hear about it.
Where do you find the time?
I'm really busy with real estate right now. That's why I asked some people to help me out with like the planning for the book, because I'm selling houses.
Give me. We got to stop for a second. I want to get into the book next. I just got to go to a quick bathroom. It's always good to have you here, Nina, but it's also nerve-wracking because I just don't see much hope that Canadians can change things. Because the Canadians that are leading are never going to be changing things. They're just going to be continuing to do what they're doing. That's why I keep on asking, how do we change it? How do we do something? I know lots of people talk to me about blue-collar parties, getting farmers, getting working class, getting those people in those positions of power. But then all of a sudden, power corrupts individuals. Whether they're good people and they want to come in and they want to genuinely do good for the Canadian people, they eventually get corrupt because of the system.
The forces that are taking, they're outside forces. These aren't Canadians. These corporations that are we're really rolling out the carpet for Ontario Place, that's an Austrian corporation. The Wilmot Farmers, we're putting that together for some corporation to want to come here. So it's corporatism. Corporatism is trumping individuals, but corporations don't. They need individuals to run them, but the individuals we have no rights. The corporations, as they more and more privileges are given to them, they don't have to even explain themselves. They can just be charging fines without hearings, AMPs, and the government also is charging AMPs now, with the municipalities with their photo radar in their school zones. Those are considered AMPs. So when I spoke about AMPs against real estate agents, and people said, oh, that's only real estate, it's you wait. When you allow it, it comes for everyone because it's greedy, and it's a way of, oh, you need some money? Just do this. Just do what we're doing. Oh, the realtors are doing this. They're just charging AMPs and funneling money to their 100 corporations.
Someone told me recently, or it wasn't recently, it was towards the end of last year, that they're pushing a lot of the photo radar kind of thing, and it's got nothing to do with reducing speed limits. It's got everything to do with just collecting money. But what was really concerning to hear is that when you went online to pay the fine, you were speeding, you got the ticket, what have you. When you went online to go pay it, the system wasn't working, and then the fine got lapsed, and then it increased. So is that all being done by design now? So then you end up paying more as a result of getting this one single fine.
It's Lawfare.
Yeah.
It's Lawfare. So it isn't just that you got the ticket. I had a red light ticket once, and the fee for paying the ticket, you could only pay it, I think, online. And it was years ago, but I had to pay, I think, a $30 or $40 fee for the privilege of paying it online.
Wasn't there a court ruling recently regarding Cineplex and online additional fees that they were charging to actually use their service online? And then the Canadian court, deemed it unlawful to do that, so then they ended up losing and they had to get rid of that fee. But now you got their own government doing it themselves, and now they're collecting more fees. It's really just about collecting fees. It's not really about policing or changing people.
It's more of the same. Like the municipalities aren't receiving money from the province, the downloads that they used to from the province and the federal government, but they're given tools, other tools to, well, you can get your money here. You can get your money from the taxpayer. You can get your money in your school zones by putting in these cameras. But I don't think it's about people driving slower in the school zones. I think it's about the fees. Yeah. Because they need the money, they need the resources, and they're just collecting money because they need it, because the province is cutting them off, like they're giving them less and less.
Wasn't Ford's brother good when he came into power, and he ended up getting rid of all these perks that a lot of people that were in government were just abusing? Parking privileges and all kinds of fees being waived and all this other stuff. And he was like, no, we're going to get rid of all this stuff. And he ended up doing that, but then it's unfortunate you get his brother coming in now, and he's just amplified all that stuff.
Well, even Rob Ford and Doug Ford, like they had plans for the waterfront with Ferris wheels, and so that wasn't. If you read I've read the Ford books, and they were even within Toronto City Council. Like there was pushing. They were pushing for certain things to be done, and also the increases to the police budgets. That was all done with Rob Ford. It was Rob Ford that increased the police budgets so much. He was very friendly, I guess, with the Toronto Police Service. But our policing has absorbed so much of our municipal budgets, and that's a huge problem all over Ontario right now. Like many of the municipalities have OPP policing, and they're receiving their bills that are some of them I think are like 30% higher than they were expected to be. And the municipalities have to find the money, they have to cut costs somewhere else. They don't have or they have to increase taxes. Because the policing cost the local policing is just so astronomical now. It's too expensive. They don't care. They don't seem to care about how much our budgets, how much our taxes are going up to fund their businesses. It's a police business, and they have no consideration for what it's doing to our taxes.
I could understand the increase in policing and paying for it, but I don't see it. With the amount of crime that's been going on, and specifically in Ontario, it's like dramatically so much higher crime-wise. Like, where is the police presence? What is really going on? So if you are paying all this extra money and the municipals are being forced to pay all this extra money, where is the service of policing happening? Protect your investment one drop at a time. Your home or project deserves the very best when it comes to waterproofing. Trust nothing less than the service that guarantees you peace of mind and lasting protection. Meet Antonio, the expert behind AquaStop Waterproofing. Whether you're a homeowner wanting to keep your basement dry or a contractor in search of a reliable partner, Antonio and his skilled team deliver unparalleled quality and service. From the first site assessment to the final backfill, every detail is handled with precision, ensuring your project is completed on time, on budget, and to the highest standard. Antonio's team doesn't just solve problems, they prevent them. With a proven track record of working with insurance companies, educating clients, and using the best products available, AquaStop Waterproofing offers a solution you can depend on for years to come. Experience the difference with a team committed to excellence. Antonio and AquaStop Waterproofing are your go-to professionals for all things waterproofing. Get in touch with AquaStop Waterproofing today at 647-631-4144 or visit them at www.aquastopwaterproofing.ca. For direct inquiries, email Antonio at aquastopwaterproofing.ca. Let's make sure your property stays safe and sound, rain or shine. This message is proudly supported by the Construction Life.
You know, they spend a lot of the money. There's actually a section you'll find in any library you walk into on policing, police services witch hunting their own members, and their members being on paid leave, and them just keeping them on this hamster thing going. Like there's a few local ones in Waterloo Region. I actually attend some of the hearings and it's one of those things just for If I have the opportunity, if I'm not busy, I'll attend, and I watch what they do to their own members. Like there's one, there's been two. She's written 2 books, and her hearing was again going on like last week. And Waterloo Regional Police Service, they've spent over $700,000 witch hunting this member, this former member. Like she's no longer a policewoman. She resigned, and they've kept her in Lawfare. Like that's really what it is. That they've kept her on Lawfare, defending herself ever since she resigned. And I look at that and I'm like, those are my taxes. Like these are my property taxes that are paying the $770,000 on this person that has retired. And I'm sitting through your hearings and I'm listening to your lawyers, which I'm paying. I'm paying all this. I'm paying for all this. And I'm watching your lawyers slither and this, and for what? What are you doing this for? We're paying for these witch hunts. They're witch hunts. I don't have any other word to explain it.
What did she do? Did she speak up or speak against or something?
She spoke out against the police service. She wrote 2 books. The 2 books were already, like, they were out, and they, like, she quit her job. She resigned her position and signed on the resignation, and they tried, I think they tried saying that she wasn't allowed to speak publicly or something. They tried to make her release something that it wasn't. That's what I kind of get out of it. They're trying to make it that you're not allowed to speak based on your...
If you were one of them, you can't...
Resignation. But she didn't agree to it. She refused to sign that she wasn't allowed to speak, because the business she was in, she actually went into the business of better policing, and she wrote a couple books, but they were trying to stop her from being able to do anything.
This is what I mean about the level of corruption. It's like once you get in there, then you just have to be a part of them and continue doing the exact same thing. That's why I've said over and over, you can start a blue-collar party. You can try to do what Netherlands did with the farmers and coming into power, which was great. You can try to do what's going on down south in Argentina as well, which is great. But nobody is interested in doing that because they love the system those people love the system that's already in play, because it benefits them and all of their friends around them, financially speaking, opportunity-wise.
You know, people that could put their names on ballots to make a difference. Like a lot of people, they really can't take the time from their business or from what it is that they're doing for whatever reason. But people that can, like if you can put your name on a ballot and if you have a good understanding of it, do it, right? Like it's like it's not something I don't want to be a politician.
I'm sure you've been asked.
I have been asked. I really love what I do, and I'm used to what I have going on. But for me, the political end is only because I don't like the changes that I'm seeing. So I speak up from that perspective. But I don't want to be a politician either. And politicians, like some politicians, just get chased out, I think. It's not a fun job, but they hardly work in Ontario. Like they don't have to do too much in Ontario. They only have to do like 20 or 30 sittings a year, right? They're mostly closed. They're closed they're closed to the public and open for business. That's my Karis title to my Karis book.
Which is actually factual. Like that's exactly what's going on. Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah. What else do you dive into the book? What else do you touch upon?
It really dives into all the different housing initiatives and how all the different interventions that have happened. Yeah, there's 22 chapters. There's 22 chapters here, but the more the government intervened, the worse it got. So it's almost like, like if you have somebody not very good at something, why are you letting them continue? Like, why are you continuing? You're very bad at this. You're very, very bad. So it's like Wreck-It. Like I consider Doug Ford, to me, the Doug Ford government is Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah.
They're wreckers.
I would say
they
that.
wreck. They wrecked Ontario Place. They're wrecking the Ontario Science Centre. They're wrecking.
They're giving their buddies work.
Yeah, they're wrecking our finances. They're mortgaging us into oblivion. I keep
Yeah.
saying that. So Doug Ford, just the 91 billion that they've added since 2018. Yeah, it was 337 billion in 2018, and now it's 429 billion. So the 91 billion that he's added alone, the interest cost just to his portion is 2.7 billion. So even after we get rid of Doug Ford, there's no plan to pay this down. I don't see anybody paying down this debt that we
Does anybody
owe.
ever come in with a plan to pay it down? At any level of government?
I don't think I've ever heard anyone
I've
say
never
they're
heard of
gonna
anybody
pay it
talk about
down.
that, paying it down. They always point the finger sometimes that it wasn't our party, it wasn't our government that did it. We're going to try to maintain it, but we're never going to pay it down. But as an individual, isn't that what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to pay your debts down. Isn't that the option on the table? You pay it down and then you move on from there.
The $200 that's going out to everyone in Ontario like
Oh, that was
next
a
month.
fiasco.
It's
Yeah.
$3 billion. We also don't have the money for that. So that was when I spoke on the budget, I said this $3 billion will cost us X amount within 10 years because we're taking a cash advance on a credit card with no plan to repay it.
And no idea what the interest rate is on it.
It fluctuates.
It moves, exactly.
Yeah.
Right? They could tell you one number today. Next year it'll be a different number, higher, I guarantee you.
It's been everywhere between 3.2% to 10.9% over the last 35 years.
You get a lot of people, Nina, like you get a lot of younger people, I find, they stay neutral. They're not interested in rocking the boat, whether it's right or wrong. They just rather not speak up about it, right? And they figure that just for their own mental health, they want to stay in the middle, and I won't get into this argument about whether Ford is bad or good or whatever government it is, right? And I just don't think that that's the right way of doing this. Like, we need to take our country back and try to figure out how to make this country profitable to begin with, right? I start with the climate argument. I'm like, start digging. Like, just start digging. Start selling gas to other countries. We have so much land, and we know we have so much gas and crude. We should be selling that stuff at top dollar to every country that we could possibly find that wants it. We know there's lots of countries that want it.
We're so resource rich. Like Canada has everything.
Everything.
That's
Everything
why it's
here.
like, well, what if people don't want to trade with us? It's like,
They'll
we have
to.
everything.
They have to trade with us. It's just who's making the deals. That's the problem. We have the circus making the deals, and they're not making the deal in our favor.
Within Cambridge, where I'm raised, you used to be able to, within the city itself, you had everything that you needed to build the entire house. Everything was there.
It was all locally.
Everything. We had a brick company, we had stone company, we had glass company, we had everything right there within Cambridge. The cabinet makers, it was all happening right there. So that was from the beginning of like my career to now, nothing's local. Everything's being brought in from everywhere. So we're spending all kinds of money trucking stuff around the world. But like we used to do this all locally, and when we did it locally, those were local jobs for our youth and the people that are supposed to be maintaining the systems that we've been building. Like the next generation has to come in and pick it up. What we're growing in prime agricultural land now. We've taken prime agricultural land, and instead of growing our food, we are now we're building warehouses. We're growing warehouses to import the things that we used to make. And
What a shame.
so all the jobs that we that used to be for everyone coming out of our colleges and universities, they're coming out of colleges and universities and not having jobs that make sense to what they just spent on their education. But those jobs used to be here. The manufacturing jobs are gone. And we get told lies, like, oh, manufacturing jobs are up. No, they're not. Manufacturing jobs are down, and manufacturing is leaving, and we're paying to subsidize to try and entice new manufacturers to come in. businesses that are already existing, like the farms in Wilmot, are being decimated, or like the Service Ontario locations that were shut down and given to Staples. Those were local businesses.
I heard about that.
Right? So you're taking away local business from local people and giving it to these new outsiders, right? To these corporations. And sometimes the corporation doesn't even pay tax. So what are we getting out of it? Like the one ministerial zoning order that happened in my city, it was for an Amazon warehouse, and they said that it was going to give us 1,000 jobs. Well, it's one of those automated robot site ones that I don't think there's.
So where was the 1,000 count coming from? The construction jobs that built the unit, the structure,
and it was all Quebec plates. Like they weren't local people they're building. Because I was driving by that all the time. You can the building is so huge, you can see it almost from Guelph. Like when you're coming down the 401 at night, this thing is like glowing, right? You're like driving along and you're coming down this hill and it's like glowing. That's the Amazon that was built by Steve Clark's ministerial zoning order. The entire village where it's called Blair, before it was all amalgamated, it's called Blair. There's about 100 houses there. 51 people spoke out against that, and they still slammed it in. But ministerial zoning orders just take everything right to the front of the line. Front of the line. There's no process.
They can just do that. They can just get out, move.
They did over 100 of them. The Ford government they did, I think, 120 something ministerial zoning orders since they came into government.
Why not take these structures and go a little bit further north into open land that's there, and start building communities around that? So now you got a workforce instead of trying to piss on everybody's parade.
That was the argument, is you could have gone to the next exit off of the 401, which is an industrial area. It's all industrial there. And that's where, and for me, it's like, I'm not against the development. I just don't want it here. I want it over there with the other industrial areas. That was supposed to be 14. That was 14 lots. It was going to be 14 businesses. And locally, so what I know myself is I know that we brought the services from the city of Kitchener underneath the 401 to service both the college and those 14 lots. So all we really serviced by doing that. So who paid for that? So those development charges were not recouped. Because they moved too quickly. We lost 14. They underquoted the development charges by $14 million.
Is there no responsibility, like regarding the accountability on who comes up with this original?
This just came out a few months ago, and one of the things I said is like this wouldn't have happened if it wasn't a ministerial zoning order, because it was taken right to the front of the line. So, but like if I'd have realized that, it's like I could have told you where those services came from, and I could have told you it was for 14 businesses plus the college. It wasn't just for, and it wound up being for the college and for Amazon. So we brought those services under the 401 from another city. We took them in from, like, how expensive is that? And in the end, we didn't recoup our development charges.
How stupid it is.
Over 14 million.
But whoever made that decision wasn't held accountable, and they're still working for the government, making more of those decisions.
Like that person will probably get fired, and they'll go work for the.
I don't think they get fired. I think they just get shifted around to other departments. Attention subcontractors and skilled trades. Are you looking for your next big opportunity? 2x2 Construction is expanding and is on the hunt to grow our top-tier network of professionals. Whether you're a carpenter, plumber, or roofer, etc., if you can deliver top-quality craftsmanship, offer competitive pricing, and your communication is where we shine, we want to hear from you. At 2x2 Construction, we value strong partnerships. From multiplexes to garden suites, we're all about building better together, and we want you to be a part of it. Reach out today at info@2x2construction.ca or connect with us on Instagram at 2x2construction. Join the 2x2 Construction team where great work meets great people. This message is proudly supported by the Construction Life.
So, you talk about people saying, how people, it doesn't concern me, or I'm just going to keep my head down, or I'm not going to do anything about it. Last night, my husband's friend was over, and he told me, he said, my taxes have gone up like $900 in 1 year. $900 in 1 year. Like, what's going on? And I said, well, you remember like the ministerial zoning order for like Amazon, like down the street? And yeah, well, when they don't pay their development charges, it goes on the rest of the tax base. So, when people say, well, I love Amazon, you know what, I really like the conveniences too. Like, it's not like I'm out there in the same pool as everybody else. But there's, sometimes there's privileges, or there's certain things that shouldn't be done, shouldn't be rushed. Like that situation there, the amount of development charges that weren't recouped, like those are costs that we incurred, and now we're stuck holding the bag, right?
I love and I hate Amazon, because Amazon also benefits from the fact of not paying their fair share of what they're doing. And they're the ones that actually have the amount to pay that. So they should be on the hook for these developments. All this other, if someone builds a single family dwelling somewhere, that homeowner's paying for all those fees, all those development fees, all those additional fees, the government fees, all that stuff. But for some reason, when it comes to big corporate companies, they don't pay. They
don't want to pay. Taxes really bite into profits. So it's the housing starts going down. One of the reasons, my theory on why housing starts are down, is because we've subsidized purpose-built rentals.
I agree, 100%.
Both, like we took off HST, development charges can be waived if the rents are affordable. So we have high rises that are going up that there's no HST being charged on, which there used to be HST. HST is off. So both the province and the federal government took the HST off purpose-built rentals. And they also the waiving of the development charges. So there's some financing, favorable financing available for purpose-built rental projects through like CMHC.
But that's just another magic trick.
So they're building what's being subsidized, which is expensive luxury housing, and they're calling it affordable housing. If it's 80% of the market rent, then they can waive their development charges. That's one of the things in here. So things get changed as we go, but that's one of the things in here. The definition of affordable changed within my book. Like within so it's like you're changing the definition again.
Yeah.
So, which means that more development charges can be waived to local taxpayers. And these corporations that are building these high rises, so that is being built. High rises are being built.
But they're the ones benefiting, not the end user owning the unit.
They're so subsidized, we should own them. Like that's where I say, like we've subsidized these so much that these should be taxpayer assets. These should not be private equity assets. Yeah. These should not be publicly traded corporations that are benefiting from this. But that's what sometimes they give them 25-year forgiveness on local property taxes.
Do you talk in your book about the rebound? What potentially is going to happen when we start seeing a better economy? Do you dive into any of that? No. Not yet? Because you don't see it right now?
It just wasn't I didn't really have the parameters, I don't think. Like for me, it was about what my deputations had been.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I've seen in the last few years, what I've seen happening is, and I've encouraged a lot of this too, is young people are starting to speak out. And like sometimes when somebody will say to me, like, I've got a problem with this or this, like, you know what, why don't you speak? Like, why don't you register and speak? And I'll send them the website. This is how you do it. Go ahead. And somebody the one time sent me like their written information they'd collected on something. I said, listen, you've already done the work. Why don't you speak on this, speak on the bill? And if you don't want to, submit this on the bill. Like, you just submit this, put your name and address or your everything on it, and submit it on the bill, even if you're too shy to speak. But the individual will wind up speaking. So, and there's a few people that are coming out now and speaking. And some of the language that I've used is being picked up. Like some of the ideas that I've said, like things regarding the delegated authorities, I've been saying they're not fixable, they're not correctable. So we have to take back the power. We have to take back the authority from them. These are private contract. These are contracts by government, like given to these private corporations. They're running monopolies, really. They're all monopolies, and most of them are selling insurance. And they're not paying tax.
That's the unfortunate part. Like, they don't pay their fair share, and they're the ones that are taking the biggest piece of the pie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like taxes for thee, not for me.
Yeah.
And we want to charge you fines without hearings.
Yeah.
So you pay the government tax on your income, and then what you clear, you're paying to these private corporations that don't pay tax.
Why don't we
they're
flip that
they're
around?
trying to extract money out of you for, well, you drove by the school too fast. You were doing 30 kilometers an hour. It used to be, and some of these speed limits are so ridiculous.
I know.
Like 30s, 40s. The one that was changed to a 40 in my area, like they reduced it to a 40 and put a camera in. And then as you're going, they've got you're going around a bend and it has like caution, go 40. But that's what the speed limit is. And then you go around to the caution, go 40. Well, the speed limit now is 40. And they left the caution 40 signs, which make me giggle. It's like,
Do they have the bumps on the road too?
all we want is the money. That's all they want is the money.
It's just the money. There's not there's other. Look at other countries that they're figuring out other ways to do. I can't remember which country it is. There's actually a reducing speed bump that actually automatically lowers if it detects that you're speeding. So then you're aware of it. So then you'll actually slow down and then go over that bump properly. But there's no fine associated with it. It's just educating the driver to drive more cautiously. Being fined all the time by a camera where you can't pay the first round and you're then increased on the fine down the road and you can't use the government system because it's not working. That's what they say it is. That's not how you do it.
Or well said. It's horrible.
I know that's exactly what's happening. We're seeing all this stuff unfold, right? It's unfortunate.
Orwell changed his attitude as he went as well.
Did he?
He did. Like if you read his works, he changed. So before Animal Farm and 1984, like before those two came out, like he was in the Spanish War and he was shot through the throat. So that was a real eye-opener for him, I guess, but on socialism and communism and how to set up your societies. But for him, it was just to realize that he was chased out of Spain, like they were going to kill him, right? Just because he was he thought he was helping with the Spanish Civil War. But it turned out that the communists and the socialists just come together anyway. And you're there thinking, hey, I'm a socialist, I'm going to fight this communism. But in the end, they joined forces and they went after the fighters. And they were like jailing them and they went after him and his wife. But that was, for him, that was a big eye-opener. And that's really where 1984 and Animal Farm, both, if you read the earlier works, it's different. Like his attitude is different before those two books. And it changed during, the book is called, it's not going to come to me now, it's like my favorite Orwell book, but his Spanish War book, which is really autobiographical. It's an autobiography, one of 3 that he did, but that was one of them, is when he went to Spain to fight. And that's the one that woke him up, I think. That's my perception of it.
I think we need a purge of all levels of government in Canada. I think we need to fire every single person and then rehire all new people, streamlined. And anybody who's taking the position has to understand that it's for the people. Every action that you put forward has to benefit the people, not the corporations. No more. Like literally clean up house. Just get rid of everybody. Sorry, go get a job elsewhere. It'll never happen, but that's what I think we need. Because then we would bring people in that actually want to better this country.
It's not that we have too much government. We have too much corporatism. So when people come in and when someone is a member of parliament, they create corporations while they're there. And then when they leave government, those corporations remain. So the corporations that build up over the years, that's, I think, what we really have to look at is who those corporations are. And I think we have to nationalize some of those, because the privatization that went on, like sometimes it was a member of parliament that severed a piece off of government for them and their friends to have a business.
It's a conflict of interest beyond.
Tarion has the biggest conflict of interest. I keep coming back to them because they just give me so many examples. They have no shame. Tarion has the former minister of Consumer Services that created 5 delegated authorities sitting on their board. So while Tarion went from maximum $1,700 fee on a new home for the fee for their warranty, they went from maximum $1,700 to maximum $6,000 with the former Minister of Consumer Services sitting there on their board. And I'm thinking, I see you. How dare you? How dare you? And to appoint the former minister to something so that there's been so many complaints about. Like the consumer's been complaining about this thing for ever since you created this thing. We're complaining about it. The consumers are complaining about it. And you took the guy that it was his job for 3 years. You took that guy that created 5 more of these things, and you appointed him to their board, and they increased their fee 343%. So from the perspective of, aren't these politicians, don't some lawyers just come put their name on a ballot to take something for themselves and their friends?
Exactly.
Because that's how it looks like to me.
Yeah.
They've got almost $1 billion sitting in reserve funds, and they thought they needed to increase fees 343%. They lied on their website. I went to their meeting and I said, you said on your website and in your publications that fees did not increase on homes below, I think it's 600,000. That's inaccurate on 4 categories. That is not true. Fees went up on this, and this under this of what you're saying, and they still didn't change it. They're still sitting there saying fees.
So they ignore you and they don't acknowledge it.
They just ignore you. Like there's no oversight. When the minister that had oversight is now sitting on the board, like the guy that was supposed to be the oversight for the government for 3 years, like he's now sitting on your board. They just ignore you. They just ignore the complaints.
Yeah.
If you have a complaint, you complain to the corporation itself. Like, then that's they'll actually say within there, if you look and see who complaints go to, if you have a complaint about HCRA, you complain to the HCRA. If you have a complaint about the Tarion, you complain to Tarion. They're their own complaints mechanism.
And they just let it, they don't do anything about it, basically.
They increase their fees 343%.
Then as a builder, why do you bother? You get people leaving or not dealing with it.
I don't think the builders really understand what Tarion really is.
They don't do anything other than money. Take money.
And sometimes, like when I say developer and people think that I'm against builders, no, I'm not against builders. Like builders are like the regular average, like the real builders, the people builders, not the corporate builders.
Yeah.
There's corporate builders that are a much different animal.
Well, they're the same as the politicians. They're in the same boat.
Yeah.
They have the same mindset. It's just taking advantage. That's all it is. How much more can we take advantage of? It's unfortunate.
Well, Vaughan's development charge now is almost $200,000. So City of Vaughan's development charge, their front-loaded tax on a single detached home is, I think, $199,000 or something now.
Wow.
And I did a study 3 years ago. It was $143,000. So it went up within a few years. It went up 50 grand.
Then you got to wonder what's going to happen in the next 3.
Where does this money come from?
It should, and it should actually be going down if you want to stimulate.
But they keep adding more things that development charges can pay for. Like there are more and more things get thrown under there, right? It used to be just for services, right? $199,000. That's a house. Like my first single detached house was like $140,000. Had a double car garage.
Well, Vaughan is becoming basically Toronto. It's just getting. I don't understand why so many people are so stuck on. I can't even imagine the storm that's going on in Toronto, like what their fiasco is all about, right? We've done shows before. We've had people come in and talk about where all these development fees are coming from. What are they being used for? We've discussed all those points, right? And it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary how mismanaged and how wasteful all these fees are going. And then the end user, the homeowner, pays for it. In the end, they all pay for it.
A lot of the development charges have, they actually have, they're budgeted for. Like it could be for water, for sewer, for
public, everything.
It has to be used for what it's for. Like there's rules within the Development Charges Act.
I don't see it when I drive around these cities. You would figure that with those kinds of development charges, you would have like the city of the future. You would have like perfect roadways, perfect public transit. You would have perfect everything. I don't see it.
there was amendments several times here to the Development Charges Act. So they just keep making changes and keep making changes. And you have to watch all the changes they're making as they're making them, and none of the changes are good for us. They're not making changes that are good for us. Every change they make is worse and makes it more expensive. It's more red tape. HCRA is more red tape. They said, well, we're going to get rid of red tape. The Minister of Red Tape Reduction. Like, we have a Minister of Red Tape Reduction. And it's Mike Harris's son.
I was just going to say, you can't...
And Brian Mulroney's daughter is running our treasury.
You can't have...
And Doug Ford Sr.'s son is our premier.
You can't have a manufacturing plant behind you that's actually producing red tape, rolls of it, and then you're still saying you're going to reduce all this red tape, but you're profiting off all this red tape. Mm-hmm. It's a conflict. So that means you should be removed from this position. You should be. That's why I was like, we need to purge this government, all levels of government.
Anything's better than what we have is pretty much where I'm at now. Anything's better than what we have.
Don't wish for it. Carney's not better. I'm sorry to say.
I'm trying to be very delicate on so Brookfield's in my book.
Good.
So
I'm glad.
Brookfield definitely made it into my book for the long-term care formula within Ontario. So that's there. Brookfield has many businesses, but one of their businesses that was created in 1984.
Oh, okay.
In 1984, finance and the development industry put their heads together and created a real estate brokerage called Royal LePage.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
So Royal LePage is a Brookfield corporation, and organized real estate is dominantly, if you look at who the directors and chairs and presidents are throughout the corporations, only maybe 10% of the agents in Ontario are Royal LePage agents, but you'll find quite a few of these boards are 50% Royal LePage agents. So Brookfield, which is Brookfield behind them. So Brookfield dominates the board of director and chair positions within these not-for-profits. And the articles that have come out in the last couple, let's say 6 months, regarding mortgage default insurance and expansion, so that got expanded a lot. So the taxpayers backstop these mortgages, these insured mortgages. And the mortgage default corporation that's dominantly issuing mortgage default insurance is a Brookfield corporation. So the Royal LePage having the Brookfield behind them, and then Sagen Mortgage Default having the Brookfield behind them, and then Brookfield Infrastructure in regards to the long-term care formula, which was $3.2 billion or something. So I see Brookfield's a corporation that's really stands out to me. And one of the reasons is because of who the suits are, who the people that are in these positions, why all these Royal LePage agents, why is a Royal LePage agent the chair of the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, so this is where I saw the moving of the different suits, and it's been the same suits for 30 years, 20 years, 30 years, the same people have been just moving around within this network. So Brookfield is very involved.
Abuses of power is basically what it is. Simple as that. Canada's prime for it. It's unfortunate.
People they're aware of it, and I think they're going to do something about it.
I hope so.
Yeah, I think people are going to do something about it.
Nina, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
And anybody who wants to get the book, they go to the website, or the
website, the book launch February 1st.
You can pre-order it too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So ninadeeb.com, and then also 7minutes.ca.
Yes.
And the book is called 7 Minutes Straight Talk on the Housing Crisis.
It'll be on Amazon as well.
Good.
It'll be on all the resellers. Yeah.
Ebook as well too, hard copy. Yeah.
Yes.
All the best with it. I appreciate you coming in and sharing this and scaring a lot of people, but it's the truth. I'd rather the truth come out instead of...
There's hope. This
think.
Is a democracy. This is a social democracy. We can make changes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. We're out of here.